All right.
Here we go. Woo! We're looking live at the GovCast all over Florida, Maryland. We made it through Memorial Day. Everyone's alive. God bless. Thank goodness. No major injuries over the holiday. Hope everybody's doing great. Happy post-Memorial Day. Hope everybody had a great holiday. I heard one of the things, I don't know if you guys saw, folks say like Happy Memorial Day. And so it seemed like a big thing this year was like, yeah, that's not very appropriate because the folks that are impacted most by Memorial Day, it's actually not happy. So super sensitive to folks and thankful for those who have served both our country and in public safety, and certainly in the public safety world, taking a lot of black eyes last year. And so, again, for whatever you think of those folks, for somebody to say, hey, I'm going to put my life on the line for somebody I don't know is amazing. And so if you are in the military, had family in the military, or have lost someone in the military or public safety, we're super thankful. And so I hope folks had a great weekend, had a chance to relax and unwind a little bit. Stevie B, you want to tell folks who you are?
Hey, everybody. Stephen Braun. Oh, God.
No, you're good.
All right. Stephen Braun, the Dean of GovSales University here. So I kept hearing my voice in the background. Maybe
I heard it too.
All right. So welcome, everybody, to today's GovCast. Really looking forward to it. I can get some Memorial Day stories, but Dre, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Dre.
Hi, Andrea. Good to see everybody. Happy summer, right? I think all schools are out and kids are off. So happy summer.
I think all schools have been out for a long time.
No. Last week was the last day.
I'm talking about for the last year they've been home. Parents are like, go back.
Not
everywhere.
Go
back. So
yeah.
It's fun Memorial Day. What do you got to talk about?
Steve, you got something.
So everybody talks about preparation, right? So I was getting together for this ride through the Everglades on my bike. Bicycle, it's a pedal bike. So one of the preparations is lubing up the bike chain, where you put a little bit of lube and get around so all the gears work. And I was all excited. So I was doing this the night before, and I was testing the gears, going through each one. And then all of a sudden my derailleur broke. So
I hate when my derailleur breaks.
Very, very upset about that. Tell me about it. I didn't even know that thing could break, but it broke, locked up on me. But luckily, I had a friend that had another bike, so I could still meet my buddy at the trail, 8 o'clock in the morning. But I went to the bike shop, and all those people that are still looking for bikes, there is like no inventory still, because I thought it was just a COVID crisis. Yeah, and I was like blown away. And I was like, oh, how long to get this part? They're like 3 weeks. So the supply chain's affecting the bike industry. So yeah, I'm going to be out of commission for my bike for 3 weeks. So that is my story with everybody.
That's not even your best story. Listen, that's not even
good. Wait, there's a trail. I haven't been. I'm a little nervous, but there's a trail in the Everglades called Shark. You have to know it. Shark something. It's where you go and you ride alongside all the alligators.
Shark Valley.
Shark Valley.
Yeah.
Have you been?
Well, I go to another one through like Markham Park, and there is airboat tours there that take people to see these gators. So I've seen them in the water, and they're literally like 5 feet away. So just don't go.
Listen, I got a couple of social media news flashes. One, if you follow Twitter, you can go look. Alligator jumps over a fence, so everyone feels like that fence keeps you safe. Now they got the video of the alligator just going right over the fence, looking up. Whoop. So if you're on Shark Alley, better be on your A game, because now the fence is not keeping the alligators contained. And listen,
is that why you moved to Ocean City, escaping the alligators?
I'm not here full time, just taking a little check out. But listen, the other one, that's not even Steve's best story. Steve had a golf cart, a thing in South Florida, and then souped it up. So now he has a street-worthy, like, commando golf cart. That's the real story. Who cares about your bike? Now you got this. He's got a lifted. It looks like he could go to war. It's like an ATV vehicle. Steve?
Yes.
Show us a picture. Does it have lights and stuff?
There's got to be a picture out there. Maybe the production team could, before the end of the show, let's fire that thing up. It looks like something you would like. If we go to war, Steve could be on our military team.
Oh, yeah. Did the lift kit, 6-inch lift kit. It's the max. It's jacked up, street-ready tires. Yeah, it's one of the ways to get around in Florida. It's registered. It has insurance, license plate, turn signals.
Yeah, who cares about you? Who cares about your broken bike? Let's get that one a picture of the souped up golf cart.
Yeah, so those are my two modes of transportation. Forget the cars, golf carts and bicycles. That's the best way to get around Florida.
By the way, a lot happening behind the scenes on this stuff. Steven's buying a house. He's got stuff going. Dre's getting married. So I went up to Ocean City. A lot happened behind the scenes, but whatever. So
you got a haircut, it looks like.
Got all my hairs cut. Was getting a little raggedy.
I cut mine this morning too. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You got your hair done too, didn't you, Dre?
Sure. Yep.
Hey, listen, something more official. So it is use or lose month for all the SLED, state, local education, most of them, let's say that, agencies. And so you're like, what does that mean? So in full disclosure, some of the agencies don't love use or lose because like, that's not true. But what happens, the government agencies have a ton of money. And when they get near the end of the fiscal year, those are the fiscal years right there for 46 of the states. They're at the end, the fiscal year for them is going to end at the end of June. And they have a lot of money. And typically if they don't spend it, they kind of give it back to the general fund. And so a lot of agencies will go out and spend a bunch of money this month. Now, if you talk to them, they'll be like, no, that doesn't happen. But we, as you know, track all the spending data. And every chart we have says it's at least 3x. So I think we have a couple of charts and graphs that we've shown before. Like there it is. There's the normal spending month by month. And then you can see in June, it's typically triple. So this month. So it is a great time to be in the world of government sales as they have a bunch of money and typically they're a less, what's the right word? Less detail animated, because they're like, if we don't spend this, it's got to go. And so we'll have some stats throughout the month, like random things they'll buy, like, oh, we need batteries. Let's have a big luncheon thing. So I think we've done years past, we've done crabs and lobsters and batteries and books. And so all the things are like, what do we need to keep this thing running? So just encourage folks this is the time as you jump into government sales this month, ton of use or lose. And then in July, they'll start the new fiscal year and obviously a ton of money that they're going to try to allocate. Right, Dre? When you experience folks, hot happening right now, isn't it?
Well, a ton of them, right? Because they're calling on the agencies they've already been working with throughout the entire year and just be like, hey, what you doing kind of thing, whatever. But then I've got a lot of the companies that are calling on even new agencies trying to create the relationships now. Just because they're not always going out for bid. So a lot of these processes are happening really, really quick. Really quick.
Amazing. And so listen, there it is. Oh, souped up. Look, that's Stephen Bryan. That's Stephen Bryan's new ride. That thing has to be insured, doesn't it, Steve?
Yeah. Just
is that bulletproof? Is that bulletproof stuff you got on there? Look at it turning red. It's perfect.
I know. I love
You're embarrassing him.
I know, but you don't know what I went through to get that machine and make it street legal. It's a lot of work. So any advice for someone that lives in a golf cart community, if you're going to make it street legal, just buy it street legal. I tried to take some shortcuts, but ordering parts, installing them online, and then you got to get the alignment right. It was a big pain in the butt. So looking back on it, it's finally done. So I am super happy, and that's the final product. So
there you go.
Appreciate it, Jack.
So he wants to switch the subject, so let's
that's okay. Well, so not only is it use or lose, we'll talk at the end of the show. Not only is local and state governments have a ton of money to spend, I'll just add this little precursor at the end of the show. Education institutions have a ton of money from all the stimulus, and so we're actually going to do a webinar later this month about all of the money. Education institutions normally are short on money, have a ton of money to spend, so that's going to be huge. We'll talk about that in a little bit, which segues right into today's guest, Josh Braun. Listen, if you are on the internet, if you're on LinkedIn, you know Josh. He's a superstar online, helps folks with their sales process, 60,000 followers. He helps folks do the real world part of sales, and super, super happy to have him on the show today. Josh Braun, thanks for joining us.
Woo! Why are you guys in such a down mood? Is it always like this on this show? Is it always so like...
Well, listen,
we're just extra peppy for you today.
I think we're telling this story before the show. When you talk about government sales, people then fall asleep. So we had to ratchet it up, and then then a couple of caffeine, and so we got to keep people awake through this time. You go to talk to a room when I go speak, they're like, whoever was in front of you was talking about something sexy, and they're like, the next speaker is going to talk about government sales, and the crowd they nod off. So we got to keep it live. So. Josh, thanks so much for being with us. If you have questions, Josh, again, is online superstar. I'm sure many, many, many of you know him. If you have questions or comments, please put them below and we'll get to them throughout the show today. And so, Josh, for maybe the two people that don't know you, right, do you want to give folks a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, so my name is Josh, and I started my sales career teaching 5-year-olds how to love reading and writing. And that's a tough sale sometimes. But what I realized in teaching is that it has a lot to do with selling. The idea is to motivate people to care and inspire people to learn more. You do that with children and with adults. And so roots in education. And then I worked at Nickelodeon Studios for a while on a show called Clarissa Explains It All, learned a little bit about entertainment and film editing and video production. When I say worked, I mean I cut fruit from Melissa Joan Hart. Just for clarity and just for full transparency, called Craft Services.
I used to love that show growing up.
Nah. And then accidentally stumbled into sales like I think most people did.
It's so great. So, John, I would just say, Josh, when you follow him, all the content he has online, he really, what I love, and by the way, full disclosure, we're actually in South Florida. I think Josh is as well. And so we're kindred spirits down here in South Florida making a way, but he helps folks with the real world part of sales. All of you know, if you're in the sales world, there's a lot of gurus out there, the 10X folks, and you name it. And so Josh helps folks really at the real world part of it, right? You can go to a conference all you want and feel motivated and want to do great things. But if you don't have the foundation, the nuts and bolts, it doesn't do you any good, right? You're like, I'm so motivated to be super rich and I can't talk to anybody or send a good email. And so Josh, when you follow him and the things he does, he helps you at a really granular level to be great at both cold calling and emailing and that process. So Josh, I guess my first question will be, hey, when you start interacting with folks or when you have a client, like where do you start with them? Like what is the foundational pieces when they want to be great at sales that you kind of in your process start with folks?
Yeah, the biggest mistake people make when they want to get better at sales is they start learning about sales.
Yeah.
I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but what I recommend is actually start with the other side of the equation, which is actually the buyer. And the thing to realize is that when you reach out to anybody, they're not sitting around doing nothing. Everybody is getting the job done the best way they know how. So to the extent that you can actually understand what I call the black and white version of the infomercial, how they're getting the job done today and what it costs them to do nothing. Because until you can understand the struggle and what it costs them to do nothing that they might not even know about, it's really hard for you to reach out to people.
Yeah.
So this idea of getting to know the buyer, one of the key pieces there is a theory called jobs to be done theory. Created out of Harvard by this guy, Clay Christensen, which is what I'm really well versed in, which is looking at things from the buyer's perspective. Why do people buy things? So if you can kind of understand the buying process and really understand what your buyer is doing, you're going to be a better seller. So how do you do that? You interview customers using jobs to be done, and you understand the events and circumstances that tip the enough dominoes over for them to start looking and shopping. Yeah. Because nobody wakes up one day and decides to buy an expensive mattress. I mean, I had a mattress. My wife started complaining and I said, let's flip around. I'll sleep out there. You sleep in, like anything before I have to buy another mattress. So there's always these events and circumstances that happen before people buy. And the more you can kind of get tuned into that, the more you can start to align how you might be able to help makes things way easier. So start with the buyer, not the sales process.
That's so good. Yeah.
So I have a lot of granular questions and I hope I could get to all of them today. But just being in terms of like cold calling, right? If we start at the very beginning, because a lot of our team, right, that's their first interaction. They're cold calling, they're sending emails, LinkedIn invites, you name it. So what can you do to make the first 5 seconds of your cold call the most effective?
Well, let's actually demonstrate one so we don't have to talk about it in theory. I think Jack said it really well at the beginning of the show. To the extent that we could actually give you some real world examples, the better. So I'll just talk about a cold call that I received a couple months ago from someone named Kendra. She was working at a company called Gravy Solutions.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about the problem they solve, because your product doesn't have any value unless we can understand the problem. So a person, which would be a prospect, would be me. And anyone you reach out to has a job they're trying to get done. So the job I'm trying to get done is sell my course. I have a course that I sell. I have some information products that I sell. And the thing that sucks that I might not know about, that Kendra might know about, is that every month, some people that are trying to buy my course or renew, their credit cards fail.
Yep.
And I don't have visibility into that, and I could be losing money. That's a hypothesis she has. She doesn't know if it's true, but she has to start with something that she knows that I don't know that can hurt me.
Yep.
That is a very critical part before we even pick up the phone. Something that you know that the prospect doesn't know that can hurt them. I call it the cost of inaction. And most of the time when I talk to salespeople, I say, what does it cost your prospect to do nothing?
Yep. And
they start talking about their value prop. This is not the value prop. This is what terrible, no good, very bad thing happens. And it's got to be big and expensive. So what I might not know that Kendra knows is that every month I'm losing 10 to 15% of my revenue because of failed credit card transactions. So how are people solving that today? Well, they're solving it in a few ways. Either one, they're not doing anything about it. They don't even know about it.
Yeah.
Or 2, they have a team of people internally that are reaching out to people, expensive. Or 3, it's some automated bot, which I don't know about you, but anytime an automated bot asks me for money, I don't open my wallet up. So you have to have an understanding of how they're probably getting the job done today and what sucks about it relative to what they do. Armed with that knowledge, we can now take you through a 4-point cold call script. I call it poking the bear, meaning I got to poke someone and make them aware of something that is causing them to believe that they might not even know about.
Yeah.
So here's how that sounded for Kendra. Part 1 is what's called a permission-based opener. There's tons of them, but they all have one thing in common, which is they're going to pass the baton back and ask someone, is it okay that we can talk? And so when Kendra called me, this is exactly what she said. And I'll take you through 3 or 4 different openers. But the one she said was, hey, Josh, my name is Kendra. I'm with Gravy, and I'm calling you through the Starbucks drive-thru. Do you have a moment to chat? And I said, what are you drinking?
Right.
And she said an Americano. So that's called a pattern interrupt. Very different than saying, hi, my name is Josh with Acme. That's just like, how you doing today? And I know you don't really care how I'm doing. That's kind of a traditional sales approach, right? So another approach is, hey, Andrea, my name is Josh. You're probably going to hate me because this is a cold call. Would you like to hang up or roll the dice today? Up to you. You feeling lucky, Andrea? What's going on over there? Like that's another approach, but they all have the same thing in common, which is asking someone's permission to talk.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not so much even what you're saying, but how you're saying it.
Yep.
So Kendra used a really friendly, upbeat tone. You don't want to sound very monotone, but you also don't want to sound too hypey either. You know, so you got to kind of find that sweet spot, about 125 words a minute, right in the pocket. Friendly voice. So
it's so funny you mention that, because when we do our training onboarding, we have this check-in like about 30 seconds in, and people that have been through long sales training, they always hate it. They're like, shouldn't you just keep talking? I'm like, no, we want to get their permission. So totally agree. Like we have, and when we train people that have been in sales for 5 years, they freak out. They're like, I'm not asking them for, I'm like, yes, get their permission, right? Amen.
And the psychology behind that is what's called consistency, right? If we say to someone, you can have some time, we will give them some time, because if we don't, we feel incongruent. It's the same as if you said to someone, I'll pick you up at 5, and you didn't, you're going to feel bad. So that's the psychology behind it, is we want to be congruent with what we said. We want our behaviors and our actions to be congruent. And when they're not, it feels bad on humans. It's how humans are wired. Not about selling. It's about how people are wired.
Yeah.
Right? So another one that I like to use is, hey, Andrea, my name is Josh. We've never met, but I was hoping you could help me out for a moment. With a little bit of a down tone. Not, hey, Andrea, my name is Josh. We've never met, but can you help me out for a moment? Same exact words, but one's more inviting and causes you to kind of lean forward.
Yeah.
And one not. Now, 87% of the time ish, when you use one of those 3 or 4 openers, you're going to get a neutral to a positive response, which is, sure, what do you need?
Yeah.
Right. So that's part 1 of the call. And this is like a little video game. We can actually start to measure this. Are under 87% of the people giving us permission? We got to change the opener. Right. So that's what Turning Pro is about. We're going to measure each part of the call. So now we're going to go to part 2, which is we're going to illuminate a problem. So in the context of Kendra, she's going to say, hey, Josh, I speak to information creators all the time. That's credibility, right? I speak to thousands of information creators all the time, people that create information products. And they tell me they're losing about 10 to 15% month over month due to failed credit card transactions. That's a problem statement. And now she's going to roll right into part 3. Josh, how are you dealing with that? Are you chasing people down manually? Not really thinking about it? Is it automated? Or have you outsourced it? She's poking the bear. Yeah. Very difficult for someone to say I'm not interested, because I'm not pitching anyone anything.
Yep.
I'm illuminating a problem. To which I said, first objection, I don't have any failed credit card payments. To which Kendra said, hey, Josh, please excuse me if this is an inappropriate question, but how do you know? Well, I'm using Stripe. Well, how do you know you don't have failed credit card payments in Stripe? To which I said, I'm not sure. To which she said, well, if you'd like, I can send you some instructions on how to log into Stripe so that you can see if you have failed credit card payments. And if you do, and if you'd like, we could chat more.
Yep.
Would that be okay? Now, look at how masterful that is for a couple reasons. One, she's not assuming, I call it detaching from the outcome, not assuming that what she has is what I need. 2, she's putting me in control. And 3, it's a very low friction ask. I don't have to sit through a demo. with a salesperson where I'm going to get sold. So she sent me instructions. I logged in and I didn't have any failed credit card transactions. I sent it to her. But if I do, I'm going to think of her and that company.
Yeah.
That's an example of this 4-part approach. And the final part is promise. Hey, I know I promised I'd be brief. Would it make sense if I sent you some instructions on how you can log in so you can check to see if you have this issue? And if you do, we can chat further. So again, permission, poke the bear, and then, hey, I promised I'd be brief. Can I send you something? Or would it make sense to continue the conversation? Low key, non-assumptive, leaning back, and having a strong point of view about what's the cost of inaction. That's the key part, because so many cold calls will sound like this. If Kendra was doing a traditional approach, we're Sales Gravy, and we're the #1 platform for reducing failed credit card transactions. And I wanted to get 15 minutes on your calendar to show you what we're doing. Very different approach. Because I don't have the problem.
It's good. So good.
I like that.
I was looking at the poking the bear when you were telling about your bike story at Racer's Edge.
Yeah, I mean, that just happened last week. It's a masterful example, right? I was in the market for a high-end bike. These are expensive bikes, real expensive stuff. And I had my eye on a Pinarello Dogma F12. It's a high-end, crazy stupid bike. And
you're in Steven's wheelhouse now.
Yeah, so I wanted to buy one of those. So I called up 3 or 4 shops. And as Steven was talking about, their inventory was low. But these 3 or 4 shops had the bikes, and they had them in my size. And I was going to go take a look at them. Then I called a third bike shop up the street, Racer's Edge from me. And I asked them if they had the bike. And the owner, John, picked up the phone. This is exactly what happened. I said, hey, John, I'm looking for a Dogma F12 disc in a 54. And he said this, we don't sell bikes that way.
Oh, that's great.
And I immediately said, what? What do you mean?
This is the bike I want.
This is exactly, and he sounded just like Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs was talking about the iPhone. I know you guys are a little young to remember this, but when he was talking about the iPhone, I had a BlackBerry, and I love my BlackBerry. Until I saw Steve Jobs say this. Josh, he said, Steve Jobs, the problem with smartphones is they're not that smart. It's these keys that don't move. Well, every application wants a different set of keys. So it just doesn't work. And I'm like, it doesn't work. Before that, he said that it worked perfect. So John said, the problem with buying a Dogma F12 is that you might realize that even though you thought you were comfortable after 30 or 40 miles, you're not. And because of the geometry of the bike, you can't get comfortable on it. So you end up losing 50 to 60% when you sell it. So we don't do things that way. We fit you first. And then we find you the right bike. And I said, what do you mean? I'm leaning forward now.
Yeah.
But he had a perspective, a point of view.
Amen.
Sure enough, I came in there, and it's a 2-hour fitting process. And guess what? During the 2-hour fitting process, this guy was on his game. Like, you could tell he was an expert in all things bikes. And and he was teaching me for 2 hours. That's what it was. It was like a webinar while I was getting fitted. And teaching forms a very strong bond with people. And by the end of that process, he's like, let me show you what we have that would fit you. And he has a beautiful screen, and he shows the candy up on the screen. He goes, and I have this other bike in the back that is called Snake Eye. Let me show it to you. That will fit you also. And he took it outside, changed all different kind of colors, and he sold the bike. It was sold at the fitting.
Yeah, amen.
The bike was sold at the fitting. The teaching was the thing. He out-taught the competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing about being, Jack talks about it all the time. It's about being an expert in your industry. You know, you have knowledge that people do not have. Yeah. So if you do a demo, like, really, you should be educating them and helping them through their problems, because no one wants to be sold to, going back to that. And if you could help someone or educate them, at least they're leaving with some type of value. You know, oh, this agency I didn't know that they bought what I sell with the government. But that's one thing. Everybody that has a product or service could be selling to the government. So we open up a lot of eyes through our discovery conversations. But I want to get back to your tips, because you were suggesting once you have that conversation, like the lady from Gravy called you when she was driving through, but getting that prospect list, I'm sure she was doing research on, people that have courses, and they probably do subscriptions, and that's how she found you. But do you get your list? Because I know you have like 60,000 people on LinkedIn, right? So you build a network. Do you attract your list, or do you go prospect your list of people that are good candidates? Like, what is the balance, and what have you known to be the most effective as far as getting clients that would be interested in what you have to offer?
Yeah, so my inbound is extremely strong because of the content, right? So because I'm doing so much teaching with the post, what ends up happening, and I've interviewed customers to know this pattern, is they'll follow my post for 3 or 4 months. Sometimes they'll stumble over to my profile page, they'll hit the website, they'll buy the guide, they'll buy the course, and they'll show it to their manager. Then the manager will call me and we'll have some conversations and maybe a bigger engagement. I also do outbound as well, because I want to always keep the muscle sharp. And what I'll do with outbound is I'll download all of my 64, 68, or 69,000 first degree connections. And then I'll scrub them for my ICP, my ideal targets, and ideal accounts, and ideal titles. And then I'll use a service like Ryan Reiser, who's able to identify the people that are actually most likely to pick up the phone, and Lead Genius to enrich the data. And then I'll cold call live, because it also helps me market when people actually see me doing my own cold calling. And what I'll do when I cold call is I'll say, hey, Steve, my name is Josh.
Hey, Josh.
And I'll say, I'm a pretty big deal on LinkedIn. Have you heard of me?
Never heard of you.
And I'll say, that's okay. That's okay. And then I'll say, hey, the reason that I'm calling is that I'm hosting an event on the 7th for directors of business development, where I'm sharing what top performing reps are doing differently to motivate more people to respond to their cold emails. Does that sound like something that would be of value to you, or am I way off base here? No problem either way. I know you didn't ask me to call you.
Sounds good.
And then we kind of lean back. Hey, just had a couple questions. You manage a team. Like, that's the idea. So even when I cold call, the other kind of approach that I recommend, we have the poke the bear approach, is also you can kind of incorporate an educational based call. Yeah. The recoil reaction you get on cold calls is this fear of a demo.
Yeah.
Jobs to be done. If you know anything about jobs, there's not even a first thought of shopping when you call people most of the time. They're just doing their job. And yet we're asking them to go on the opposite end and buy something, which is the demo. It's like all 4 months removed most of the time. But if we can entice them with something educational, where we're sharing their a perspective. And I might say, by new ideas, I mean a thinly veiled sales pitch, but you'll still learn a bunch of stuff, even if we never talk again.
Yeah.
So
always as friends. Worst case scenario.
Yeah, we can. You'll learn something. Mm-hmm. So that's the idea. And so I do a combination of both, but I'd say most of my business that I generate is inbound at this point.
Okay. And how often do you post to get those inbound?
So I religiously post every single day, probably 4 to 5 times a day, including Sundays.
Wow.
Okay. That's good to know.
I use a product called Buffer, where if I want to go on vacation or something, it kind of queues them up. Okay. That's my job. That's if I write, I make money.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if I don't write, I don't make money. That's as simple as it is. So I try not to get distracted by, I call it the little red dot. If you ever have a little red laser dot and you look at a cat will chase the laser dot. That's kind of like what we can get distracted with all kinds of stuff, like holograms and video and there's so much tech. But I know, all I have to do is just write. Like, if I write, and I get people calling me all the time, Facebook ads, Instagram too. I just gonna write, because it's a distraction. Like, I know if I write 4 to 5 times a day, I'll be fine. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Just trust the process and just keep repeating it.
That's it. Great
tips. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned in your fake cold call, your cold emails. So I would love to know, I'm sure you do, right? Have some tips and tricks on how do you capture the person? What kind of content do you put? Subject lines, all that.
Let's talk about it. So again, it has to start with not the cold email. The big mistake everyone makes is they go online, they find some templates, and they start filling them out. And they end up sounding really generic. Mm-hmm. They use words like optimize, streamline, increase sales, increase time, save money. And that is a white circle in a sea of white circles. Yep. Because everyone's getting emails like that, so they get ignored. To be a Red X, we actually have to start with what we just talked about, which is we have to understand what sucks about how that person is getting a job done today. Mm-hmm. And we got to do it in what I call a crispy, specific way. So when I say specific and crispy, I mean specific, because when you're generic, it doesn't hit you as hard.
Yeah.
There's a guy that I had on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. His name is Armand. Works at a company called Pace. And he did this really well. So listen to what he does. So imagine you're working in spreadsheets all day, trying to get your job done. And you got these big, long spreadsheets. And they eliminate that work. We don't even have to get even deeper into that. There's just tons of spreadsheets doing all kinds of manual work. When he cold calls, his opener, because he knows at a detailed level that these people are in spreadsheets. Watch how specific this is. He says something like this, and I'm going to butcher it. I'm not going to do as well as him, but he says, hey, we're having a contest over here at Pace to see how many columns people like you are using on a daily basis. The current record is QZ. Can you beat it? Now that's insider lingo, right? If you know about spreadsheets,
Right.
that means they went through the whole alphabet and then they and you laughed, Steve, because you kind of knew, like, so what I call that's visceral. So the idea with emails and calls is it not only you have to have a perspective, but you got to communicate it in a way like Armand communicated, where someone feels something, right? So same thing with a cold call, same thing with a cold email. I was working with another company, and this is another sort of great example, where imagine two scripts on a cold call or a cold email. And you tell me which one hits you more. So this is the first script. Hey, Steve, imagine you're in the mall and you're shopping for sneakers. You walk into a sneaker store, you want to try a pair on, trying to get a salesperson to help you. How long do you wait before you leave to another sneaker store? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes? What about you, Steve?
Man, I'd say 5 minutes is pretty, someone should walk up to you in the first 5 minutes.
It's the same thing with your website. People hit your website, you don't get back to them in 5 minutes, you're leaving too. Now that's a company they call UserLeap, right? That's going to suck you in versus this. Hey, Steve, 85% of the time, when you're not the first person to get back, they go to your competitors. And I was just curious, like, see the difference there? Yeah. One's visceral and one's a little bit more logical.
Yep.
So there's emotional hooks. And so in an email, it's the same thing. 4 structure. I call it the 4T. Once you know that perspective, you could write an email like this. So let's use a running example. Let's say you're a marathoner or a training coach. First T is what's called the truth statement, something true that you know about the prospect. Mm-hmm. So Josh, Miami Marathon coming up in 8 weeks. That's a true statement. Or Josh, Hurricane Irma just ripped through Florida. That's a true statement. Or if you're Captivate IQ, you could say something like Q4 and you've got a ton of commissions statements to run. That's just a true statement about your business. Yep. Second sentence is what's called a think, which is the illumination question. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. It's a question that's going to get you to think differently about your current solution. An example of that from a place called Adams Car Wash Supply Company was a great one that I got 5 months ago. Josh, how do you know your wash mitt isn't scratching your car? I'm like, what? It turns out that if you wash your car with a normal wash mitt, dirt can get on the sponge, you can scratch your car. And if you're a car nut like me, that's an $800 problem. He sells a bucket, you rub the sponge on the bucket, and the dirt goes to the bottom of the bucket and off your car. That's a question that gets you to think differently. So in the running example, how do you know your sneakers won't get you sidelined due to overpronation? This is for insoles. So that's the second sentence is a think sentence. And it's not a leading question. It's not if I could save you $500, would you want to have a conversation? It's a question that gets you to think differently and scratch your head and say, I'm not sure. Josh, how do you know your Stripe account isn't causing you to lose money due to failed credit card transactions? I don't know. I haven't logged in. I have no idea. Right? That's the idea. Right? And then the third sentence is a third-party credibility. Hundreds of marathon runners are using our insoles to stay in alignment so they don't get sidelined. That's third-party credibility, the bandwagon effect. What are other people like me doing? And then the fourth sentence is a low-friction call to action. I call it talk with a question mark. Worth a conversation? Worth exploring? Yeah. Is this of interest? Either way, rock that run. And either way is important because it subconsciously says there's no pressure here. Yep. So that's a 4-sentence structure. And guess what? It's similar for the cold call and similar for the email. And you can apply that to any business, but the key is to have that insight into what it is that you know that your prospect doesn't know.
So great. Those are great. And for our audience, you could tell Josh lives the details of it. Doesn't just say, do better emails, do better calls. Mine would be, hey, one of the reasons I follow you and I love and we do with our team is like, hey, the opposite approach of what you hear, the counterintuitive response is normally the one that sticks out. It's more real and it gets people's attention, right? Like if you call it the same sales pitch, even if it's wrong, as long as you're different, people typically appreciate that. So my question to you would be, hey, what in the things you're doing right now, what are one or two of the biggest counterintuitive things for sales folks that hear all the time that you and when you're in the weeds with them, you're like, dude, that does not work. So what are one or two things that you tell your folks, this is totally opposite of everything you hear. Just do it. Trust me. You have a couple of those you'd share?
Well, I'll give you an example. So Andrea, let's imagine for a second that you love to drink wine.
That's how you know. This is perfect. This is perfect.
If I said to you, Andrea, drinking wine is really not healthy, you should stop drinking it, and here's why. Are you going to stop drinking wine?
No.
Why?
Because I love it.
Because you love it. You'll actually probably drink more wine. And yet in sales, we try to overcome objections all the time by talking people into things. Mm-hmm. Talking people into things does not work. And we do it in sales all the time. We think we can talk Andrea into something. A better approach is to find someone's motivation for change, to see if there is motivation for change, and to let them persuade themselves. So I have a whole approach that I teach on how to diffuse, not overcome, objections. And it's very much based on what I call verbal aikido, which is instead of overcoming it, is just understand someone's perspective. So I might say to Andrea, what is it about wine that you like?
I could go on forever.
Let's go. Let's do this. Do it.
I love the way it relaxes me. I love the way it tastes. I love that I could drink it on a Tuesday and that's okay.
The way it relaxes you?
It makes me calm. Helps de-stress.
Okay, I want to out of role play. Notice what I did there. I said, it relaxes you? So that's called a mirror. I learned it from Chris Voss, a former FBI negotiator turned author of a great book called Never Split the Difference.
Yeah,
repeating the last 2 or 3 words that someone said with a slight uptone, subconsciously says, tell me more. And I would imagine while Andrea was talking, it feels good to talk about something that you're passionate about. So mirroring, and someone says to you, this price is way too high. I might say, I'm sorry, too high? And I say, yeah, it's really a lot. And then I might say, sounds like you're comparing this to something else with more than you thought it would be. Yeah. With this kind of calm voice. Sounds like, looks like, feels like. Those are what Chris Voss calls labels. Yeah. You can practice these techniques in your personal life. So to continue the example, I might say, Andrea, it sounds like you're really passionate about wine.
I am.
Do you have a favorite type of wine?
I do. I love Pinot Noir.
What is it about Pinot Noir?
I feel like it's just very smooth without being super strong like a cab.
It sounds like you're into just like chilling. You have like a chill vibe about you.
Sometimes.
Do you like to is it music on when you're doing this, or is it just like walking around the house?
It could be all above. It could be when I'm out to dinner. It could be when I'm cooking, when I'm watching a movie.
Yeah, so see, the idea here is to be curious, right? And so you can start to flex these muscles. We're terrible listeners, generally, because we're always waiting for our opportunity to talk.
Yes.
And that's something else that's counterintuitive in sales, is when you make people feel heard, they're more likely to listen to what you have to say.
Yes.
When you start to talk over people and try to talk people into things, people recoil. And they actually do the opposite. It's called the backfire effect. So using labels and mirrors and calibrated questions in your personal life, and you can diffuse any objection like that. We can go through things.
Yeah.
Send me some information is another great one.
I would say too, managerially, that's huge, right? It's like we have, as we manage teams, I think folks being able to, I think as managers, we want to give feedback or tell folks without getting to know them, right? And so the ability just to get in the conversation with them gives you a lot of bandwidth and to speak into their lives, right? Folks want to tell, let me just tell you. And it's like, I know, but if I don't hear you and what is that? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And that the model you're using lets people know, hey, I'm in this, which is so great.
Yeah, being curious. And again, this is not just about being a better salesperson. This is about being a better person. Yeah. These techniques have helped my marriage tremendously. You can practice them in your personal life. Mirrors and labels are great things to practice.
Amen.
And also this idea of just like slowing down a little bit and pausing, giving people 2 to 3 seconds after they get done speaking, and just slowing things down a little bit and being just calm is the opposite of what people think. I mean, whenever someone raises an objection, what they're used to hearing is the salesperson trying to talk them into stuff. Yeah. So whenever you hear an objection, if you just said, that's okay. Can you send me some information? Sure. Your price is too high. Oh, that's okay. Can you send me some information? That's not a problem.
Yeah.
What kind of information will be most helpful? Blah, 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 blah. Hey, just so I don't do you a disservice and send you information that's not relevant, would it be okay if I ask you some questions? No, just send me anything. Hey, Josh, I might be misreading here, but oftentimes when people tell me to send them anything, it's just a nice way of saying they're not interested, which is not a problem at all. I know you didn't ask me to call you.
Yes.
Like, so that's the idea of it. It's just a calm, detached, and I'm not overcoming anything. It's moving with it. It's like herbal Aikido.
Josh, do you have a tip for folks? For me, a lot of it is just being peaceful with the quietness and who they are, right? Some of our team, when you're younger in their career, they're just not peaceful with the silence or who they are. Do you have a tip for how do people, to me, it's about being peaceful. The more expertise they have, the more peaceful they are. You're very articulate because you're very knowledgeable in what you do. How do you help folks that are newer to an industry or a product and a process to come across as peaceful, although inside they're a nervous wreck? Is there any tips to that?
So a couple things. Meditation is key. I got into Transcendental Meditation, which is a form of meditation, but meditation will slow you down a little bit. Self-awareness also slows you down. The ability to self-regulate. To be able to know that someone's coming at you with confrontational energy and you have a different opinion, to be able to withhold that and just understand someone's point of view, even if you don't agree with it, is a superpower. And you saw this during the political thing. I mean, I was practicing this all the time. Even though I had a different political view with people, I just tried to understand their point of view. And guess what? They then said, what's your take, Josh? Which never would have happened if I were to try to convince them of mine. So mindfulness and meditation is really key. And then practicing it. I mean, looking at people like Chris Voss and taking that class and practicing mirroring and self-regulating and labeling in your personal life so that it becomes more energetic, part of who you are. And then finally, this idea of abundance. Knowing that you don't control people. You don't control when people buy, if they buy, how they interpret your message. The only thing you control is who you call, what you say, and how you say it. And when you start to think you can control people, it creates this negative spiral where you're convincing and you feel salesy, manipulative, and gross. So this idea of abundance, like I know when I make cold calls, if the person's not willing to talk, and they're in a bad mood, I'm okay. Like a golfer, I'm just going to go to the next hole. I'm going to try another putt. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay either way.
Yes.
I did a LinkedIn Live with a company last week, and they're like, when does someone hangs up on you, Josh, and you're a sales trainer? I'm like, that's okay. I'll call someone else. I'm still going to eat sushi tonight. Still going to go for a bike ride.
Well, so I know we're talking about, the cold calling, getting the meetings and everything. Say you do the meeting, have the call, and it goes well. You have a prospect that's interested. And then you're always setting the follow-up day and time. All right, take time to think about it, right? You're not being aggressive, like buy right now. Or maybe you are. I don't know the approach on the back end. We haven't gotten to your close psychology yet. But when you are going for it, you have a follow-up. I think that's the weirdness that kind of comes into play with the prospect. Because then you seem like you're bothering them or you're pestering them because you're just really trying to figure out, are you ready to buy or not? And that's the thing in sales. Like, hey, we had a connection. We talked. You seemed interested. It seemed like a product solved your problem. It was a fit. And then you're doing that chase game, right? They follow up in a week and then they're like, oh, well, I need another week, or somehow delays. They need to talk with their boss. So is there any, circumstances where you've been that you've tried different techniques and you're like, hey, this is actually a way where you don't feel greasy or slimy or whatever, like a bother, like hounding someone, but it does come off of like, I just need to know yes or no. And if no, it's okay.
Yeah. So Jack made a great point earlier, which is this is another counterintuitive technique, right? Whenever I'm on a discovery call with someone, I try to talk them out of the sale.
Yes.
I basically say, so this happened last week. There's a big Fortune 500 company called and wanted to bring me in for some sales training. And I said, hey, what's going on over there? And they say, hey, we got like 5 of us that are doing real well. But there's like other of us that aren't doing really well. But the managers are like, we know what they're doing. And we're also booking meetings. We're doing really well. And I said, well, have you guys considered like you training the team? Seems like you're doing really well. Why would you want to bring in like a former kindergarten teacher to teach it? It's terrible. And they're like, well, I guess we could do that. I was able to easily talk them out of it. Right. It's like, what would happen if you just did nothing and you guys just did it? Well, not much. I go, would your boss want to bring in someone from the outside when they just got 3-4 managers like internally?
Yeah.
Like I'm having this why conversation with people, always trying to talk them out of it. And what I'm listening for is, are they trying to defend it? Saying, well, we tried that for 7 months, Josh, and we can't figure it out. Well, we can't do that because we have a book of business to run and we don't have any bandwidth or this, or I'm listening for the reasons where if there aren't any, I'm like, that's not going anywhere. It sounds like it would make sense for you guys to go try that for a while first.
Yeah.
And then then say, I think that would make sense. And then you save yourself a bunch of time, right? So I'm never assuming someone wants to move forward. I'm seeing where are they in the timeline. So again, back to jobs to be done. There's a first thought. There's a bunch of things people try on their own. Then they start shopping. Then they buy. Yeah. I'm trying to think, where are they? Yep. And if they're over here, and I say to them some version of what happens if you do nothing, and they say not really anything. That's not closing.
Yeah, you're not moving it.
Not closing. So I break up. And never, ever, 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 ever follow up incessantly. Because when you're needy, no one likes that. You're desperate, right? So here's a quick tip that you can use, because it happens to all of us. Let's say a prospect was interested, and they promised you something, and they ghosted you. When prospects ghost you, it's because they're afraid of you. They're afraid that you're trying to get them to move faster than you're ready to move. Mm-hmm. And it's the pressure that is off-putting to people, and they don't know what to do, so they just don't do anything because they know that you're going to try to overcome them. Yeah. So I rarely get that now because I create an environment where people feel comfortable telling me the truth because they know I don't care either way. Like, I just want what they want. I'm going to illuminate some things, and then I'm going to let them decide for themselves. But in a situation where someone does ghost you, rather than following up 7 times and cold calling and staring at the opportunity, is you can send a 1-sentence email. Again, inspired by Chris Voss, and this is what it sounds like. And it works beautifully because you get to control it. Either they're going to respond or they're not, and either way, you're moving on.
Yep.
And here's the 1-sentence email. It would say, hey, Andrea, have you decided to defer the cold calling workshop? Have you given up on the email workshop? Have you put the project on ice? It's 1 sentence. Generally, when I do this in a workshop with people, and there'll be 50 people in the Zoom, and we'll have them all send one of these emails, within, 4 minutes, there'll be 20 responses back. Yeah.
Amen.
Either defending or, Josh, what is if no one responds? Then go to the next prospect.
Yep.
Get it out of your pipeline. The best sales reps don't have fat pipelines. They have skinny pipelines.
Amen.
Because when your pipeline's fat, it's too much going on. Yeah. It's not, it's kind of like Tinder, and you don't want to swipe those out and just get to the 3 or 4 that are like the ones that you want to really concentrate on.
Yeah. I would say for our audience, listen, 2 things. Somebody that's buying is not playing a game, not calling you back. They're probably not buying, right? People are like, they were so excited. You're like, they're not buying. No one's like, I'm going to buy from Steve, but I'm making him sweat. You got to know the person's clearly disheveled. And I also say it's important when you think the process is failing, you got to go to the step before that because you probably didn't end the call well, right? You're trying to fix it's already broken, right? Yeah. So it's just you got to go back to the step before. You didn't end the call, be like Tuesday, you know what I mean? And so I have sales reps too. They're like, it was so great. We're going to call them 8 times. Like, no, they're not buying. They just like, stop calling them.
Look, here's the thing Steve said. That's, problems alone aren't enough to make people switch. I have a pixel out on my TV in the back bedroom right now, but I rarely watch that TV. And when I do, I barely notice the pixel. It's a problem, but given everything else I have in my life, it's low on the priority list. So problems have to be intense and frequent. And I have to have tried a bunch of stuff. So I'm always listening, and salespeople have happy years. They have the problem, like, so what? I got lots of problems.
Yeah.
I got tons of problems. Yeah. Is this a problem that you want to fix right now relative to everything else you have on your plate? Amen. Like, how big and expensive is this on the priority list?
Yep.
And do you want to do this? And just ask someone a question. Is this something you're looking to solve, like, within the next week or 2? I would imagine this can wait, given everything else you have. And listen to the energy. Like, if they can't say a long story as to why this is the most important thing and they're not getting amped up, that's probably not closing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much every outbound opportunity. Those are a little bit of a longer cycle.
Yes.
So I had a question. So when we have new folks coming in who are doing the cold calling, doing the emailing, right, just trying to book these appointments, these demos, a lot of times their question is, well, how often should I reach out to them, right? When is it too much? When is it not enough? When do I not become annoying? So do you have any kind of like cadence that you suggest?
Sure, but here, I'll preface it by saying, I'll talk to you about a cadence, but a crappy message is a crappy message, whether it's magnified by 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 things. So normally when I get this question, there's a step before this, which is what we've been talking about for the majority of the podcast, is most people don't understand the black and white version of the infomercial. They can't pass my infomercial test. And let me just give it to you right now so you can see if you pass it, which is, imagine you are in the kitchen, you love to make French fries for your family. You make them 4 days a week. You love making fries. And there you are in the kitchen, you're with a knife and you're cutting the potatoes into 1/2-inch pieces. Some are 1/2 inch, some are a little bit bigger, some are smaller. You put them in the oven. You nick your finger sometimes with the knife, but that's just the way it is because you're not a professional. You serve them, and because they're all different shapes and sizes, some are crispy, some are a little soggy, a bunch of them end up in the garbage can. Doesn't make you feel good because you slaved over them. And then you spend about an hour and a half cleaning up the kitchen. But that's just life, man. That's just how you make fries.
Mm-hmm.
Now, notice I didn't talk about the potato peeler 3000 because it doesn't matter yet. Notice how that was crispy, meaning it was specific. You probably, when I was telling that story, were able to see the movie in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Like you probably saw the person in the kitchen with the knife. You saw the finger bleeding. You saw the potato peels. Like you saw it. Yeah. And it sounded like something someone would say. When I give the infomercial test to most salespeople, they can't do it like that. What they sound like is, well, we help them optimize their 360-degree supply chain, and we help them save time and money. That's not crispy. That's generic. And that magnifies your message across all your 8 touches and sequences. So I'm trying to get to the problem. The root problem might not be the number of touches. The root problem might be you don't know the prospect well enough. That's usually what the problem is.
Yep. Amen.
And so with regards to the cadence, I'm a big combo prospecting fan. I love the triplet. And so for people that are not familiar with it, it's a phone call, which is typically a voicemail, unless you're working with Ryan Reiser. As soon as you leave the voicemail message, you send a email, and then you send a follow-up, which we could talk about a couple of days later, and that's your first triplet. Mm-hmm. And that's talking about one of the problems that you solve. So for a triathlon coach, we're going to talk about the swim problem. Then I'm going to wait 4 or 5 days. I'm going to do that same triplet again, and I'm going to talk about the bike problem. Then I'm going to talk about the run problem. Then I'm going to talk about the nutrition problem. Then I'm going to talk about the mindset problem. I'm not going to cram all those chess moves into one email. The emails that I teach people to send almost look like a text message more than an email. Yes. Literally, we talked about these 3 or 4 sentences. Mm-hmm.
Less is more all the time.
And you can mix in, hey, Josh, we're hosting a webinar on how to train for high heat races. Notice you're signed up for Cozumel. Is that something you'd like to see?
Yeah.
So you kind of mix in what I call these deposits into the mix as well. And then the cold call scripts that we talked about. But yeah, three sets of 3.
I can't tell folks, and I'm sure, Josh, I get so many voicemails and emails that are so long, and you're just like, God, please stop. Just if you have you got to be able to say it in 30 seconds. So encourage everybody. Less is always more. Get it down. Like no one's reading no one's scanning through your email. I don't care how good it is, and listening to your 2-minute voicemail. Finished. Well,
the idea with voicemail messages is do you guys watch any shows on Netflix? Any series? Do you guys watch anything? Yeah. What do you guys watch? Andrew, what are you into?
I watch a lot like Amazon. I'm watching this one, Mosquito Coast. I think it might be on Apple TV. Mosquito Coast or Mary.
What do they do the last 2 minutes of Mosquito Coast? The last 30 seconds. What do they do in all of these series? What do you notice?
Cliffhanger.
Why?
Right?
Why? To get you to watch the
next week. Yeah. Next week.
In psychology circles, it's called an open loop, right? And in sales, what we do is the opposite of that. We don't give anyone a reason to tune in or talk to us. So I teach an approach with voicemail to essentially create an open loop.
Yeah.
So that we're promoting the email. I'm not giving people all the information, so I'm giving them a little bit of information. Hey, John, notice that you're selling to CTOs. Got an idea that might not be on your radar that can help you get in front of more of them. Check your email with the deets. My name's Josh. I'm with Josh Braun Sales Training. What is this thing that might not be on my radar? Lesser known thing. What selling to the specific people? Then the email will say voicemail. So I'm kind of promoting it that way, but I'm always leaving like a cliffhanger. Even in the emails, I'm not giving away exactly what it is or how it works. People know how to click on links. They know how to read websites. You don't have to spell out the how.
Yeah.
You just got to create the cliffhanger and create enough curiosity where they're leaning forward because they want to learn a little bit more.
It's amazing. We try to work with that. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Stop taking all the stuff you learn. Just be yourself. Josh Braun, you are amazing. Thank you so much. How our audience, I'm sure many of them want to ping you, reach out to you. What are all the ways folks can connect with you, touch base with you, find you, call you, write you, all those things?
If you're in Boca Raton, Florida, I'm usually on A1A on the weekends on my bike.
See you and Steve.
Or my specialized Steve, or I'm not being on his golf cart. LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best place to get a hold of me.
So I think we have looked for the production. There you go. So there's Josh's LinkedIn. So please reach out to him. We'll actually put it obviously in the notes of this show. And I think we have his website if you guys want to pop that up as well. So he has a dedicated website, and Steve has an inbound call. Lee, look, they're trying to get a hold of you.
We'll help you. Hold on. I'm going to jump.
You're watching the show. They're like, I want to buy GSU. Josh, any last words, advice, anything else you would leave with the audience?
Talk less, listen more.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for being on the show. We appreciate it so much. God bless. Stay safe. We'll definitely be in touch. Amen. Gosh, I love it. I mean, that is so real. Whether you're selling to the government, whatever you're doing, those things, we talk about our team all the time. It's in the nuances. Listen, if you're starting sales or in sales and you're wondering what the difference between you and the person making twice as much money, it's all in the details. It's not the big things. A lot of sales folks are, well, just tell me the pitch, the pricing and the FAQs, and I'll go crush it. No, it's all in the minutia. As you hear Josh talk, the tone of voice, all the little nuance, like it's so nuanced between good and being great. It's amazing. I love his stuff, right? Anything specific to stick with y'all?
All of it.
Yeah, that's what I was say. It's just so great. I wrote down those 4 T's.
I know. I have a whole bunch of notes. Yeah.
The third-party credibility and then the talk.
Yes.
So many people just jump to the talk. And I think that's where sales conversations go awry because people feel like you're steamrolling them. There's like, or word vomit, or however you want to phrase it. And I think just to take a step back, and you say this all the time, Jack, be real, be yourself. And once you do that, people are like, oh, he's a human, not a salesperson. Yeah. But people can, when you're getting a sales call, as soon as you pick up that first 3 seconds, you're like,
No, I should have deleted.
You just hang up on it.
I hang up on everybody. I think it's that fine line though, right? Because especially like in our day-to-day, right? Or most salespeople, your end goal is you want to, let's say, book the appointment, regardless of what you sell. And so I think it's finding that balance between, hey, I'm calling you, Jack, because I want to book the appointment, but how can I not sound crazy desperate, but still relay the same message? You know what I mean?
Yes. I just want to encourage everybody. We talk about this in our company all the time. How do you do it? We talk about that on the show. 180 degrees different from everybody else. Yeah. That's how you stand out. Taking a little risk, being yourself, saying something a little, that's different, that gets you called back. Like you're the same voicemail, no one's big time people that have stuff going on are not responding. When someone calls me and be like, did you see Lamar Jackson? You finally got him a receiver. I'm like, squirrel. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, you're in my world. And so, gosh, you just leave me a long, boring voicemail. By the way, you call me and leave boring stuff, I forward it to our sales team. I'm like, don't leave voicemails like this.
Like this person.
So, hey, for our audience, really quick before we out of here, we are going to do a webinar on when is it, Steve? The 16th?
Yep, 16th at 12 noon Eastern time. You go to govsalesuniversity.com/webinar. And right now is the time to target schools. There's a lot of funding going on. Everybody knows about the CARES Act, and then there was the American Rescue Plan, and there's the I heard today ESSER. So there's a lot of funding coming in. They're going to have these budgets, and if you want to get, now's the time. July 1st is when they get this budget. So the end of June and the beginning of July are the best times to be targeting them. So we're targeting the 16th at 12 noon Eastern. Just go to govsalesuniversity.com/webinar, and you can register. It's absolutely free. So I hope to see everybody there.
Yeah, listen, this is one of the examples we're doing 180 degrees different because people here sell to schools. Schools typically don't have any money. I don't want to talk to them. Oh my gosh, kids aren't even in school anymore. Is it a good target? Let me just say this, there's no better target. I don't care whoever you think you're selling to. The schools right now have a ton of money. Yeah. They're not used to having money. They don't even know what to do with it. It is like somebody hit the lottery. Your nephew, cousin, aunt just won the lottery. They got $10 million. They're just like, oh, you get 1,000, and that's an open thing. You get 1,000, and you get 1,000, and you get 1,000. Like that's what's happening in the school world right now. So goodness gracious, if you have anything remotely that could work for a school system, a school operation, please tune into that webinar. A ton of money. We want to help you get some of it for your company. Amen. Any last things? Anybody? You got any? Steve, Dre, anything? Any last? No. Anybody? Oh, there it is. We're golfing. We're golfing. Steve's going to be riding down A1A, running into Josh Braun, and the cat's up. Look, the cat is up. Mia's up. Oh! We'll see you next week. We're out. God bless. Have a great week.
Adios.
Oh.